right, 5 wide receivers from the class of 2024 that you need to watch. I'm your host, Matt Hicks, the FF Educator, joined tonight by Brandon Lejeune at Devi Deep Dive on Twitter. Brandon has fantastic content put out at Devi to Dynasty that is on YouTube, and that is a podcast format as well. Brandon, we're at the point of the summer here where a lot of folks are compiling their lists, all right? They want to get an idea of who the top of the class is, get an idea of who are the priority guys to get their eyes on. And so what I did is I headed over to your YouTube page. I found a few videos of guys that I want to watch, and I want to pick your brain on them. Sound good?
Sounds great. I appreciate you having me on. I'm ready to already scout the 2024 class already.
Let's start here, Brandon, with number 1. That's going to be Malik Nabers, the wide receiver coming out of LSU. 6'0", 195, 72 receptions, north of 1,000 yards, and 3 touchdowns last year. Brandon, it's supposed to be Boutte leading the way for LSU, but it really was Malik Nabers last year.
I mean, 3 things stand out for me with Nabers. And again, on my YouTube channel, I put out a film against Georgia. It was the SEC championship game. I mean, his ball skills and hands are fantastic. I mean, I think he can go up and get it in traffic, down vertical. 73% catch percentage last year. He's got really good yak ability too. I don't know exactly what his speed is, but I think he's got some ability with the ball in his hands to do some damage in the second level. And he's got that vertical playmaking ability. I mean, he showed on his film last year, he had the ability to do stop routes and whip routes and inside slants and out routes. But turn on the tape, man, you're going to see a kid who can go vertical. So he's an exciting prospect I think people need to know. And he should get the majority of the targets again at LSU. I mean, outside of Nabers, there isn't anyone there in that wide receiver room that I think is really going to, press him for targets.
I think Nabers has a realistic first round potential. Would you agree with that?
I definitely agree with that. I'm a big mock draft watcher, and he's getting nibbled in there in the first round. So, and he's got that size, I think, that the NFL is looking for, right? We had a lot of young receivers go in the draft this past year that we were concerned about. Is the NFL turning to these smaller, maybe a little bit less physical wide receivers because they're twitchy and they're explosive and they get open? He seems to have that just above size. He's not too big. He's not too small, but he's like right in the middle. I think he's a perfect prospect to be a solid wide receiver, 1 or 2 on a team.
Absolutely. All right. Number 2 wide receiver. You want to make sure you're getting your eyes on this summer from the 2024 class. We're going to talk about Dorian Singer, formerly an Arizona Wildcat, now has transferred to USC. And if you look at Dorian Singer's profile, I think we've got a potential top target for Caleb Williams coming in. 6'1", 185, 16.7 yards per catch in his first 2 seasons in college. Does this sound like somebody that Caleb Williams might like to pass the ball to?
Well, I know it's Lincoln Riley wants him on the team because he torched USC last year for 3 touchdowns. So he saw firsthand an explosive playmaker in Dorian Singer. Again, he's got that good size, 6'1", like you said, 185, 190. If you watch the tape, I put a film out again on my YouTube channel as well of his game against USC, and just watch the 3 touchdowns that he made on, they weren't easy. None of them were easy. What they displayed was a guy that had fantastic concentration, good hands, good length. He can go up and win the 50-50 balls. Him running in the second level of the field, he fights for every yard, and I love that about him. He is not the biggest guy in the world, but he does not shy away from the physical contact of the game, and that's something, like I said, mentioned previously, it's something that I look forward to. I'm expecting Singer. They got a lot of pass catchers, a lot of incoming freshmen that may or may not get on the field this year, but I would expect him to maybe come in and be that Addison role. I think he is our, probably the most explosive receiver on that team. They got a lot of good wide receivers at USC this year for sure.
I absolutely believe that he's going to be a quick impact player. And I think somebody now who's hovering in that 50 to 102 range, but, top 50 potential, that's a big deal right now. Number 3 wide receiver, you got to watch, get your eyes on here from the 2024 class. We're going to talk about Rome Odunze out of Washington, 6'3", 201. We have production, Brandon. We have size. And you had a really cool video on your channel. You got to interview Rome.
Yeah.
So I would love to talk a little bit, not just about his skill set, what popped out about the film, but what are his intangibles and what are you looking for when you're looking at those intangibles? You get the opportunity to sit down with a guy and chat for 40 minutes.
You have to get your release has to be good. Then your route stem has to be good. Then your route break has to be good. And then you have to catch the ball. And then when you catch the ball, you gotta have the ability to get loose. So I feel like, you mess up on one of those parts and the play's dead, right? And it's no good.
First off, he's just a humble man, right? And I love that about him. And number two, he knows what his weaknesses are and really what he worked on in the off season. So one of the conversations that we had in that interview was why he didn't go to the NFL draft last year. He was one of the last juniors last year who decided to return to Washington, and he just felt that there were other things that he wanted to work on his game.
Yeah, being back in college football is probably the best decision for me, to hone my skills and be an asset for this team and go win a national championship.
And like I said, I love physical receivers, and this guy brings it to the table. 6'3", he's going to be probably one of the taller receivers in this class. So if there's an NFL team out there looking for that boundary receiver, prototypical X, Z receiver, I think this guy is going to fit the bill. He played 84% of his snaps out on the boundary, but I think he's a good route runner. I think he's got good hands. I think he's a monster to take down in the open field. And, like I said, I probably have 8 or 9 films of him on my YouTube channel. And I just came away really impressed with his game. I think he's a very well-rounded. The knock on his profile is probably he doesn't have the elite speed, but, not many 6'3" receivers, 205 are going to have that kind of speed, but he wins with his physicality, and I think he's an exciting prospect. I think he's definitely going to be a top 5 wide receiver in the draft next year.
Number 4 wide receiver you got to get your eyes on here this summer is going to be Troy Franklin. Now, I think Troy Franklin has all the pieces to be a fast riser here. Sometimes, man, these Pac-12 West Coast guys get slept on a little bit. They're in the later window. The Devi community is a little slower to catch on.
A little tired,
Yeah, you're a little sleepy, man. Not all of us are sickos staying up till 3 a.m. watching, making sure we get the Hawaii game in at the end of the day. But when these guys they catch fast, right? You got separation, you got manipulation in terms of his route running ability. That's going to catch the eyes of a lot of folks.
Yeah, I think he's got good hands. He's got ball skills. I think he can win vertically too. He's got all the makings of a great wide receiver. He's twitchy. He's explosive at the second level. The one thing people are going to be maybe concerned about is his size as far as his weight, because he's 6'3" and 180 or something like that. But we've seen these young, these smaller, thinner receivers make it to the NFL. And I think his traits certainly outweigh anybody concerned about his thin frame. I think he still needs to work on his route running. But I'll tell you, I thought we both, because we did a film review on 2021 and 2022, and we saw big improvements in his game. And I'm expecting another leap in 2023 of him just honing in on his skills. But again, given that length that he has at 6'3", he's got a unique profile of wide receivers in the 24 class. He's got that height, but he's going to be on the thinner side. But he's a player you definitely have to keep your eye on.
Big part about watching guys over the summer is identifying both strengths and weaknesses, right? And you want to identify those weaknesses because you want to identify when they hit, if they hit that growth in the fall, right? Because as you alluded to, Brandon, that year-over-year progression and development, that's huge for me. I'm going to take that guy that's developing year-over-year as opposed to somebody who burst onto the scene as a freshman and kind of hit his ceiling and never grew from there. That shows coachability, that shows long-term development, and a higher ceiling, in my opinion. Let's go ahead and get here to our 5th. I saved him for last, Brandon, the guy that you want to make sure you get your eyes on in the 2024 class, because I know he's one of your sleepers.
Yeah.
It's Antwane Wells out of the real USC, the University of South Carolina.
Yeah, I really didn't know much about Wells about a month ago, and I saw some stuff on Twitter come by, and then I dug into his tape. I watched like 6 or 7 games from him last year. Again, made a video as well, and I'll tell you, the kid just impressed me. The physicality that he brings, he's got that my dog mentality. You can see it throughout his entire game. Yak yards, going into the second level at the stem of his routes, on the sideline boundary, fighting for that. He made some amazing high point 50-50 grabs. He's really underknown right now. I just don't think a lot of people. He was a 2-year transfer. It's his first year in South Carolina, but he led the SEC second in receptions with 68 and 5th 5th in receiving yards and 928, coming from I think it was a group of 5 school that he came from, going to the SEC and dominating. And there's not much I don't not like about his profile, to be honest with you. If you watch him, I don't know if you've had a chance to watch my film on him or not. I mean, what was your impression?
Yeah, I think, what you mentioned, the amount of versatility that he brings to his game is really impressive. So he transferred from JMU, Brandon. That was actually, it's now a group of 5 school, but when he was there, it was an FCS school. So to make that jump and compete at the SEC with the physicality that he plays with, to be able to find separation before and after the catch. And let's keep in mind here, you talked about the numbers, 68 receptions, 928 receiving yards, 6 touchdowns. That's huge in the South Carolina offense. This is not a super productive passing attack. So to be able to step in year one, produce at that level against tough defensive backs, like that is super impressive for me. He's not going to be somebody who's going to go in the top 48 picks of a, Devy draft right now, a Devy startup draft right now. But Brandon, I think he's going to be somebody who's going in the top, 24, 36 picks of a rookie draft next year, a year from now.
So yeah, this is a guy that's probably, possibly in late day day 2 pick in the NFL, but most likely around 4 or 5 guy. And those guys again, so it's a sleeper. This is not, we're not including Wells here in the top echelon, and so we don't want to misinform everyone that he's like a guy that you should be going out and arguably going after. But I have a feeling that if he produces 1,000 yards with Rattler again and playing this year, I think this time next year he's definitely going to be possibly a round 2 rookie pick.
This is the time that I like to learn. I like to get into the process. And if you want to get into that, Brandon's YouTube page, Devy to Dynasty, that's a great spot to do it. He takes an educational approach, a learning approach. If you want to get more Devy resources, of course, dynastyleaguefootball.com. You can head on over to patreon.com/rookiebigboard, get in on my Devy rankings, my Devy insight, the trade channel in the Discord, the Devy channel in the Discord, all that great stuff. Brandon, thanks so much for joining me, my man.
Yeah, pleasure having me on, bud.